The Freedom of Information Act in California reveals shocking sex education details for little middle schoolers. And to think that the anti-homeschool advocates have the nerve to call homeschooling authoritarian and abusive. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're talking about a Freedom of Information Act request that shows just how deviant schools have been regarding sexual education. And of course, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, this is California, because what happens in California sadly doesn't stay in California. It's like kudzu, right? It just slowly creeps across the entire country, and its filthy deviance buries everything between its green leafiness. Yes, in California, we have Karen England, head of Capital Resource Institute, who sought these documents of 900 school districts through a FOIA request and found a number of smoking guns where students are subjected to lessons and activities conveying dangerous, obscene, and medically inaccurate information. But what shocked her most of all, and we'll get to this at the end of the segment, is sex squads. Sex squads. Now try to keep AOC and Tlaib out of your head. We'll get to the sex squads coming later.
Yeah, she actually now it's in my head, so I can't even go there. But she discovered things about the PTA. The PTA, which is supposed to, do the bake sales, and I thought it was just a group of parents getting together who were all concerned. But at a Sacramento area grade school, it was the PTA who actually contracted with Planned Parenthood to present assemblies to our fifth graders talking about sex ed discussions called puberty talks. But it wasn't really just puberty talks.
In fact, they're spending almost no time on hair under your arms and a cracking voice. It's about all sorts of other things, as you can imagine.
And these, of course, have been happening, not just, they're planning in the future or just happened. They've been happening over the past couple years, and they're contracted. Such a good term.
You got the Parent Teachers Association contracting with Planned Parenthood. And you wonder, why are we giving $600 million a year to Planned Parenthood of our own taxpayer money when they're actually partnering with all of these states, and it's not just California, schools all across the country to provide this deviance to your little kids, unbeknownst to you, Mom and Dad, unless you're on the PTA.
No, this is true. And you're leading the charge.
When you think about TNA, and put a P before it, think about what the PTA now stands for. Not Parent Teachers Association, but Public School TNA for your elementary school students.
Well, during the fifth grade PTA puberty presentation, the Planned Parenthood, that's a lot of P's, representative addresses boys and girls together with details about erections and ejaculation. Children are told that they should talk to a, quote, trusted adult about these matters.
And that wouldn't be the parents or their local priest. No. That would be a Planned Parenthood representative.
Or maybe the parents of the PTA. And, of course, they're hearing this from the largest abortion provider in America, seeking to gain trust from 10 and 11-year-old future clients. And that's the thing. Let's get all buddy-buddy and trust the Planned Parenthood. If you have a problem, you come talk to me. And then, you need an abortion? Okay, here you go.
Yeah. Let's make sure you're having in middle school, late elementary and middle school, let's make sure you're having as much sex as possible. And we'll sell you the condoms, and you can come for us to counseling. We'll provide the lubricants. We'll give you the animated colored charts. We'll show you videos. And if you happen to get pregnant, we'll terminate your baby all the way, giving you your first mammogram.
Exactly. And so obviously the curriculum that is being put into that, I guess, these large assemblies is being funded by the PTA, which is funded by the taxpayers, and Planned Parenthood already is getting funded by them. So these assemblies, we've talked about this in the past, how they have the genderbread, not a gingerbread. It's a genderbread person talking about what the body parts are, but not accurately.
And we're talking about 10-year-olds.
10-year-olds.
For 10-year-olds.
10-year-olds.
Right?
Yeah, so that genderbread
person.
Yes, they talk about where genitals differ from sexual orientation and gender expression. So you can't just be like, okay, that's a boy and that's a girl. You have to say that's a body with a penis or that's a body with a vulva. But you can't say it's a boy or a girl because, they may not identify.
Even more alarming, we've got sex ed squads. We literally have roving bands of sex surrogate children.
And this has been going on for years.
Yep.
A handful of years, and we just haven't paid attention.
You know how the fact that this has not gotten out shows you how little parents are informed about this. So you've got these sex ed squads, which are operating in a number of schools in the Golden State as an activity for students. These are essentially sex ed clubs. Again, heaven help you if you try to have a Bible reading club on campus, but you can now have a sex ed boot camp. They teach kids detailed condom use with penis models, lots about lubrication, how to use dental dams for anal and oral sex. Lest we repeat that, dental dams, where you cover your mouth so that you can perform oral sex on the anus and the vagina. That's what they're doing now, these squads. And what's so insidious about this is they found a way to keep the teachers from getting screamed at. They found a way from get the admins from getting attacked. You empower the kids to do this with other kids. And then the school can say, hey, our kids want this. Our kids are proactive about this. Our kids want to make sure that everybody understands safe and healthy gender transitioning for 5-year-olds.
And of course, they're going to do this because it's a club, and it's not. I guess you're not forced to do it. You can
it's not in
opt
class time,
out,
so
if you will.
How do you can't opt out because no one knows it's going on, and it's
Yes.
not during class time.
That's exactly it. So they have these, sex ed boot camp things, and they're learning more about their bodies and becoming more responsible. That's what they're claiming, obviously. It's educational.
The goal is to train participants to become peer educators. Well, could the peers actually do worse than the teachers, what's going on now? With stated goals to talk about sex and sexuality every week after school. Teach about condoms and STIs, participate in fun stuff like sex ed boot camps, and learn more about their bodies and become more responsible when it comes to being safer. Not letting little kids try to contemplate sex acts that many adults don't want to practice, maybe that's the best way of keeping them safer, as opposed to throwing this all at them, and then you know what's going to happen, the peer pressure. If it's not teachers, it's, you're a 4th grader and these are the 8th graders doing this for you, right? And these are the kids you aspire to be like. And they're the ones talking down. How soon before a 8th grade peer instructor actually engages in sexual activity with a 5-year-old? A 5th grader, I should say. How long is that going to be? Because what you've got now is a built-in system where the older kids are mentoring the kids. And you and I both know what that means. If you have an 8th grader and you have a 5th grader, look at how the 5th grader follows around the 8th grader. Look at how the 8th grader is able to manipulate that kid in 1,000 ways. This whole thing is insidious.
All right, moving on. We have a mom in England who is quite upset after her 11-year-old daughter came home from school one day with schoolwork that asked her to define hardcore pornography as well as other inappropriate topics. So children in years 7, 8, and 9, which is the 11 to 14-year age range, at the Archbishop Sentamu Academy in Hull, it's a Church of England school, were set their work in the Personal, Social, and Health Education, PSHE class, as part of their home learning. So the assignment actually says, define pornography, soft pornography, hardcore pornography, and transsexual pornography, as well as female genital mutilation, wet dreams, trafficking, male circumcision, breast ironing, and many more. As you can see, transgender, sexting, revenge porn, all these.
Revenge porn. You're going to have kids to define this stuff, and you know what they're going to have to do to define it. They're going to have to go online,
Well,
right?
So here's what the mom says. They have been told to use Google, and she would have searched it. Her daughter would have. The mom said, I did Google hardcore porn, and some of the images that came up was quite disturbing. She said if her daughter had searched these phrases online in order to define them, the results would have destroyed her mind and scarred her for life. And mom said, I'm just thinking, there's kids out there who have done this work. You would be scared at what you saw. At 11, I was playing with Barbies. If they had seen it, they can't unsee it. Now it's making me think, what are they learning at school that we don't know about? And we only know about this because right now, they're homeschooling, essentially.
I just Googled revenge porn and hit images, and it is the most incredibly disgusting thing you'll ever see. And if I did that, it took me 5 seconds to do this. I simply typed in the assignment and hit images. And it is staggering what those kids are going to see there. And so this is what they're doing. And keep in mind with regards to your kids, they see all forms of sexual behavior as legitimate. And so pornography is not what you and I considered. It's not degrading. It's not objectifying. It's not lurid. It's not, what it is now is examples. It's exempla, right? Here is the easiest way to get kids to see what we want them to understand. Pornography, believe it or not, is now part of the curriculum. And this is at a Anglican school. You imagine what's going on in the secular schools there. This is part and parcel of your kid. Your part and parcel of your kid's sex education now is absolutely pornography. And I noticed that you may, amongst the other things they had to define was female genital mutilation and circumcision. Guarantee you that for all of their freedom and everything goes when it comes to sex, they're going to treat those two things as the same thing. Male circumcision, according to these progressives, is every bit the outrage that female genital mutilation is. They're trying to lump the two of them together, right? Okay, it's bad to cut the sexual part of a sexual organ off a female in order to deny her sexual pleasure, but isn't that the same thing as Christians and Jews do? Isn't that the same thing when you circumcise the foreskin of a little boy? It just goes to show you they are Nazis when it comes to their worldview, but they are absolute libertine when it comes to showing kids things, even hardcore porno, if it furthers their ideological aims.
And the thing is, Mom is saying these things. She says about her daughter that she was only in primary school last year, living her best life. Now she's being asked to search for hardcore pornography. She's 11. She should be doing stranger danger and don't share your info online. But genital mutilation is another thing. It was asking about male circumcision, breast ironing. I didn't even know what that is myself.
Breast ironing?
Ironing. So chest binders. Remember that type?
I thought you were eating too much starch.
Stop it.
You gotta laugh or you're gonna cry.
Wow.
You gotta laugh. And
Moving on.
Before you move on, I gotta point out a couple things here. Is that here's the other thing. The average middle school kid, you're literally giving him permission or her permission to get online and view pornography.
Absolutely.
So now, how do you stop that? How do you turn that tap off? So when that kid is sitting there in the middle of math class and he's got his Chromebook open and he's watching hardcore porno, you actually have to applaud his initiative, right? Because you can't really call him out for it, can you?
I'm doing my homework.
Right. Hey.
Well, of course, the school's response. After complaints from parents, the academy has apologized for any offense caused. Here's the official apology from the academy principal, Shay Bell. I am genuinely sorry if parents or students have unnecessarily researched any of these phrases and for any offense caused. I've asked that any future materials of this nature have a clear statement ensuring students and their parents are aware of any potentially sensitive content and will ensure materials are fully age appropriate. Here it is. The PSHE materials that we share with students are produced in line with government guidance, the PSHE Association Programs of Study, and the Sex Education Forum's definition of sex education. They're also cover the Equality Act, blah, 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 blah. Here it is. Students were not directed to research these topics themselves on the internet because all the answers to the questions students posed were contained in the teacher-produced materials we shared. Again, I am genuinely sorry for any upset.
What happened to, I'm sorry, we'll never do it again,
No.
End of sentence? Whatever happened to that? We're going to keep doing it. We're just going to make sure we're doing it. We'll hand them the pornography rather than sending them to get the porn themselves. Outstanding, outstanding. And this is a so-called Christian school in the United Kingdom.
Well, on to our next story. Well, in case you didn't notice, we have a world pandemic going on. So the most important thing the United Nations can do is make sure that you're actually not using gendered language because that's not equal. The equality, we're missing it. So their Twitter put out an official guidance for how to help create a more equal world by using gender-neutral language if you're unsure about someone's gender or are referring to a group. There's the list of it. So you're, instead of having to say, mankind, because that's offensive, somehow humankind.
Yeah, and I make this point every time this comes up. You're seeing it on the screen. There's the word mankind, and look at the word humankind. It's got the word mankind in it, right?
Yep.
And so explain to me, United Nations, why that's acceptable, right? It's humankind. And you know what they have to do? Use the word person.
Person.
But look at the word person. It has the word son in it, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And that's not right either. You morons at the United Nations. In the name of being politically correct and accurate, let's stop calling you the United Nations, because that's a wrong misnomer. You are not united. You don't have anything to do with nation states. You're trying to dissolve them for your little globalist dream. Let's stop calling you the United Nations. You are the disunited anti-borders crowd of radical progressive liberals. Maybe if we started calling you by what you actually were instead of this fake "we're the United Nations," maybe we'd get rid of you sooner. Maybe people would realize what a waste of time and space you are, and how much you think we spend a lot of money on the World Health Organization to get nothing out of it other than praise for the Chi-Coms when they lie.
Yeah.
Imagine how much we could save by doing away with the disunited anti-nationhood organization that used to be called the UN.
What's the acronym for that then?
Yeah.
Well,
Dumb?
anyway,
Can you get dumb in there?
Dumb.
Well, we'll make it work.
Well, people also need to remember, because they never do, that the United Nations have member groups that include countries such as Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, like all these ones who will kill people for being homosexual, kill people. And yet we're supposed to say that you can't say mankind because
you're not allowed to say
offensive.
you're not allowed to say male or female on birth
You
certificates.
can't say
You're not allowed to say
chairman.
mom and dad.
The one on here that you can't say landlord, but you can say owner. Okay, so if I'm renting an apartment,
To an African American in Alabama,
thank you.
I am not your landlord.
I'm
I ain't your landlord, Joe Biden would say. I'm your owner. Get over it. So throw that list up there again. I mean, the United Nations, what a joke. Partner instead of boyfriend and or girlfriend, my partner. Salesman is salesperson. There's that son again, right? Manpower versus workforce. I'm threatened by the language, the violent language of workforce.
force.
Are you forcing people to
triggered.
work? Is
I'm
this
triggered.
forced
I'm
work?
triggered.
This strikes me as a very unhealthy accommodation there. Instead of maiden name, family name.
Well,
but I thought families were really only sanctioned by the state. I thought families don't really exist.
That's true. But if you see in that tweet too, the hashtag says that how we're supposed to ungender woman. What does it say? Unwomen. So they're putting a gender in their little tweet to begin with, and it's their own website. So they seem to be also picking gender, but not the ones they
And
want.
now you're calling the chairman a chair.
Yes.
Right, way to dehumanize them. I mean, you see people who are committee chairs as nothing more than four-legged stools for people to sit on.
Do you want to know the silver lining of this
Yeah.
whole thing?
What's the silver lining?
If they're back to doing this gendered language, I guess the pandemic's over.
Dunce. Dumb United Nations can't exist. Done. That's what we're going to call you from now on. And notice that no one's offended in a gender way if we use dunce.
Now on to our real education segment, featuring maybe some gendered language. Chartres Cathedral, also known as Notre Dame de Chartres, or the Cathedral of Notre Dame, is a Gothic cathedral located in the town of Chartres in northwestern France. Generally ranked as one of the three chief examples of Gothic French architecture, along with Amiens Cathedral and Reims Cathedral, it's noted not only for its architectural innovations, but also for its numerous sculptures and its much celebrated stained glass. The cathedral's association with the Virgin Mary, the supposed veil of the Virgin, is kept in the cathedral treasury, made it the destination of pilgrims in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about one aspect of Chartres Cathedral. I would like to talk about the windows because they are works of art in themselves. And a lot of people don't realize what the purpose of stained glass windows are. Mike, show some of the pictures as we're talking here. Just absolute gorgeous illuminated windows, another way to look at them. And there are two main things in cathedrals that you want to give a sense of contained space, right? Everything that goes on in a cathedral is a reflection of some aspect of Christian theology. The size of the cathedrals, why are the cathedrals so big and yet so contained? Well, what you have here is the idea of God. God is omnipresent. He's everywhere, but not in a random way. So when you walk into these huge cathedrals, and they are huge places of open space, but confined, right? We talked about in a previous segment, the arch. The fundamental building block of the cathedral is the arch. When you walk into a cathedral, the arches actually take your eyes and move them up to the heavens, right? We talked about the dome in a cathedral, which is a great sphere. The circle is the geometrical image of God. Why? Because a circle, and you can see the circles there in the windows, the circle has no beginning and no end. It is a universal symbol. Actually, it's why we wear wedding rings, right? The wedding ring is a symbol like the circle, right? And so when you go back to the stained glass windows, what is their purpose? Well, think about it this way. If the sun, the sun, is a image of God, remember God is light. Among other things, one of his great capacity is light. All light in the universe ultimately emanates first from him and is reflected thereafter. If you think about the power of light to convey, well, you can't look at the sun directly. The power of God in our limited human minds with our weak human senses, we can't look at the sun. It's a beautiful image for what separates us as human beings from the divinity that is God, the omnipotence that is God. We cannot look directly into the sun, but we can see the sun reflected. You could go up to a cool brook, right, and look at the sun as it's reflected in the water. And so this is St. Paul's through a glass darkly, right? Some of the great truths, particularly the truths of God's own being, we can't see it immediately with our senses, but we can see it mediated. Paul calls it like looking through a dark that has been a glass that has been frosted, right? But it's the same thing here with the stained glass. And if you go back to the stained glass, think about what happens when the sun outside the cathedral hits those beautiful, painstakingly put together shards of different colored glass. What happens is that light comes immediately reflected into the church, and you see what you could not see before. You could not look directly at the sun, but 1,000 different colors, 1,000 different refracted colors of light inside show the diversity of God, and the light has been mediated by the glass. And it's a beautiful thing to see on a sunny day when the light just filters in. Now, as far as the cathedral goes, it contains 176 stained glass windows, the feature for which it may be best known. Like the sculpture, the stained glass was intended to be educational in the ways I just laid out for you. The 5 windows of the choir, the hemicycle, a semicircular arrangement, relate in various ways to the Virgin Mary. The rose window, and then you can see that right there at the top, the rose window in the north transept portrays figures of the Old Testament. The south transept, which is representative of the New Testament, also has a rose window depicting the apocalypse, or the end of the world.
Well, there you go. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a message on social media. Now, as always, wrapping things up with our fun fact of the day, the UN has 6 official languages: English, French, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and Mandarin. I think they're going to have to get rid of it.
I think you have to amend that to include...
Oh, yes, that too.
Yeah, all right. And that's going to do it for us today on the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and until next time, get us out of the United Nations, America. Get us out. Get us out now.